bringing the people behind our food to life.
Today we're going to be making street-style enchiladas, which come together more quickly than a baked enchilada and are less rich. The procedure is you take corn tortillas and we're going to dip them in an adobo sauce, which is a sauce based on dried Mexican chilies. The type of chili that we're using are chilies ancho. You can also use mulatto chilies. It's from the same family. You can find dried chilies at Mexican tiendas or supermarkets. And the way that you use these is that you need to rehydrate them to make them soft and pliable, and they end up looking like this. So what you do is first you want to take off the stems and take out the seeds. And I find the easiest way to do that is just with a simple pair of scissors. So I cut behind where the stem is here, and then I can take it and slit the chili down the side. And then I sort of open it up like a book, and they mostly just fall out. You'll see in here the little dried up membrane or rib. This is where a lot of the heat of the chili is actually in that membrane and also in the seeds. So depending on how hot you want your enchiladas, you can take out all of the membrane and seeds or take out none of them actually if you prefer it that way. So once the chilies are de-seeded, you soak them in hot water to cover for about 20 minutes or until the chili seems soft and slippery and pliable like this. And then you can go on to make the adobo. So you will typically use a blender or a food processor. A blender is probably better because you are breaking everything down until it's a smooth puree and looks like this. The other ingredients in the adobo vary, but in this case, besides the chilies, we're using cumin seed and black pepper. This is Mexican oregano, which is stronger than Greek oregano. A little bit of clove, a little goes a long way, so watch out how much you use. I'm only using one. And then I have ground the clove and the cumin. So I'm going to just put everything in the processor. I got a little of the soaking liquid that was with the chilies. That's okay because I need to loosen this up. And then the clove and cumin. And finally the oregano and the black pepper. I'm going to season with salt. I'm going to put in a little brown sugar, and the reason I'm doing that is because chilies, besides being hot, can sometimes be a little bitter, and depending on what your taste is, you might like a teaspoon or so of brown sugar in there. And then one last ingredient, rounding out the flavor, is garlic that I have put in a dry pan over medium heat with the garlic in its skin, and I've toasted it, and I toast it until it becomes soft and you can squeeze it, and until you can see some brown or black marks on the outside. And then I peel the garlic, and it looks like this on the inside. There's some caramelization there. I'm using about 7 of these and 6 chilies. And then I'm going to add a little water into the bowl of the food processor because otherwise the blades might not break down the chili skin. It can take a little while for the chilies to break down. Chili skins are unpleasant, so you want to make it into a puree. I'm going to stop and scrape down the sides of the bowl with a spatula. You have to watch out when you do that because if you put your face directly over the bowl, you might cough a little bit from the chili oil. And while this is breaking down, it can take as long as 2 to 3 minutes, leaving you time to do a little bit of something else. I'm going to check the texture and taste it. It needs to go a little longer. The other thing to know about dried chilies is the amount of heat they have really varies. Even though some types of chilies are more hot than others, even chilies that are typically mild, you can occasionally get a batch that are pretty hot. So I'm going to balance out the heat in this batch with a little more brown sugar than I originally added. I'm going to scrape down the bowl again. And I'm going to let it go one more time. The adobo is finished. It's smooth and it's seasoned, and I'm going to put it in a bowl that's medium size so I have room. And this is what I'm going to dip the tortillas in before I fry them in just a little oil in the griddle. Obviously this is too thick, and I'm going to thin it with a little water. I want it to be of a consistency where it just clings to the tortilla. If it's too thick, it might burn in the pan. Once you thin it with water, you always need to check the seasoning again, because whatever salt level or sugar level is there, you've just diluted it. That's pretty loose, like a loose chocolate sauce, very loose. I'm going to check it, give it a final check. Put a little more salt in. Little brown sugar, and just a splash of apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is nice to use in Mexican cooking in adobos because it's slightly sweet and it plays off the chilies really well, and because it's fairly mild, it's not quite as acidic as a wine vinegar. So this is our dipping sauce, and we're ready to start cooking the fillings for the enchilada and the tortillas themselves. Now I'm going to assemble the enchiladas. They're filled with queso fresco, which is a fresh Mexican cheese. It resembles ricotta, but it's seasoned with salt. I'm going to use a couple of different kinds of vegetables, zucchini that I've cut into sticks, and a yellow potato I've also cut into sticks or batons, and then I have poached them in water with a teaspoon of the adobo sauce that I just made, and that gives the potatoes a little more flavor, and that's why they have color on them. The first step is to start out sauteing the zucchini because I'm cooking from raw at this point. With just a little oil and salt. You can use any kind of vegetable that you have around, really. You could use roasted winter squash. You could use spinach that you quickly sauteed. You can use carrots cooked the same way. It's very versatile based on what you have. The zucchini I'm just going to cook until it is slightly tender. It takes a couple of minutes. I don't want to overcook it. I'm cooking the zucchini and the enchiladas on a griddle or a flat top, but of course I could be doing this in a skillet or a saute pan at home. The potatoes are already cooked, so now I'm just going to put them on the griddle to warm up. And now I'm going to do the tortillas. I have the thinned out adobo and fresh corn tortillas. I dip them in the sauce briefly. I put a little oil in the pan or on the griddle, and then that fries. And I move quickly enough that I can do a few at once. In this case, I'm doing 4. The tortillas really only need about 20 to 30 seconds per side. So I'm going to start flipping already. And you can see how the color changes once the adobo cooks. It gets darker. Now I'm going to fill each tortilla with a little bit of the queso fresco. If you wanted, you could easily make these enchiladas vegan by leaving out the cheese. Queso fresco isn't really a melting cheese, so you won't see it melt. And then I start filling each tortilla with some of the vegetable, the zucchini and potato. Just a little. And I'm working in kind of a hurry because I don't want my chili sauce to burn. That will make it bitter. And then I start folding over the tortillas and taking them off the heat. Enchiladas actually don't have to be rolled. You can fold them over so that they look like this. Now the street style enchiladas are filled, but that's not the end of the process. They get quite a few garnishes that are crunchy and salty, and including pickled jalapenos, which you can buy at the store or make your own to give this a little bit more zip. So you lay over some strips of pickled jalapeno, as many as you want or don't want. And then we put on the crunchy shredded romaine. Iceberg would work too, or any lettuce that you have. This dish really starts to resemble more of a salad at this point. Radishes for crunch and color. I'm adding onions and cilantro, which are very common garnishes in Mexican food, especially tacos. Onions you use for the bite and cilantro for the clean, fresh flavor. And then we're not done yet. Then we're going to put on another kind of cheese. This is called queso cotija, which is similar to queso fresco except it's aged, which means it's drier and saltier. So you don't use as much as queso fresco. You use it as a garnish, much as you would use Parmesan in Italian cooking. That goes over the top. And then finally, a third kind of cheese. This is called crema, which is a cultured cream similar to sour cream or creme fraiche, just to give the dish a little richness. And there you have it, a dish that can use any kinds of vegetables that you have around and that relies on the fresh flavors of raw vegetables and Mexican cheeses and the deep, rich flavors of dried Mexican chilies.
Aha, boy seeking corn, ad says good cornbread. At that point, it was just a whim. It could have failed, but it grew, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen.